for attending today's session. To our online participants, muchly appreciated. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate your time. Really hope that you're going to enjoy this as we have first-hand experience. And for our online participants, thank you so much for having a look at this recording. I hope this recording will be beneficial to you. Please note that we have social media. We've got our Facebook page, which is I-Set Lego. And then we also have I-Set Unisa on YouTube. Without wasting time, I'll hand over to Meneer Johannes for the house rules. Thank you. Meneer Johannes. All right. Without wasting time, it's simple. If you have any questions related to today's session, there will be a question and answer session. And also, if you are currently using your cameras, kindly please mute it or disable it in order to save your bandwidth, in order to prevent distractions during the recordings. Otherwise, without any questions, I'll hand over to Dr. Hoos.
Thank you. Thank you, Tumelo. Tumelo certainly is keeping busy today, so thanks, Tumelo. All right. So really welcome. This is now MOOC number 2. In MOOC number 1, we just focused on getting learners just to build a robot and to program, really the basics. And what we really want is learners to kind of grasp the understanding of building a robot. But there's always that thing they need to keep learning, and they need to keep building, because we're developing skills. We're developing their building skills, their programming skills, and then in between are their 21st century skills. So what we've done, what we come to now is in MOOC number 2, we say, all right, so how do we kind of elevate the level of programming? And we elevate the level of programming by using sensor data, so input data from your environment or from the robot's environment. All right. And how do we measure that? We measure it through sensors. Now, some sensors are easier to use and easier to understand, and some of the sensors are a little bit more complex and to kind of for the learners to grasp, especially if you're working with grade 4s and grade 5s. First, make sure they understand the concept of what you're trying to do, and then you'd move on to the next sensor. And so kind of in the realm of sensors, I would definitely go first touch sensor, then ultrasonic sensor, and we will do color sensor later, and I'll have a table set up for tomorrow for the color sensor. I really want to warn you though, the color sensor, when you do the color sensor, you do need to calibrate, and you do need to make sure that the colors that you are trying to detect are the correct ones. All right. But that said, with color sensors, you can do so much more cooler things. I mean, you can follow the line on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, and you can follow lines. And that whole thing of following a straight line or a curvy line is that it all becomes part of the learning. So there's lots to unpack in the color sensor. You think it's just following a line. Well, it's not. The gyro sensor is and remains a sensor that really needs understanding. And so if you have a table or if you have a mat that there's no disruption of the gyro, then
Dr. Foles, can I kindly please disturb you a bit?
Yes.
Are you sharing your screen?
Not yet.
Okay. No, just
okay.
make sure.
I'll tell you now when I'm saying. I just want, thanks to Melo for noting that. So I just want to say, if you're using a gyro sensor, you must make sure that the robot is not shaken, because then the gyro goes off. All right. And so I don't know how many of you are following the World Robot Olympiad competition. The robot needs to go over some bumpies and goes over some pieces so that is going to unsettle the gyro sensor. It's just what it is, and you need to accommodate that. So Census is awesome. I would recommend maybe for the first competition that your learners participate, Sensors are not that important. They can usually get away with accurate programming, but by the time you come to your second competition, you've got to have a gyro. No, you don't have to have a gyro. You've got to have some sensors, and you've got to use it. And so mounting a sensor on a robot is not enough. You've got to actually use the input data in your programming, and you've got to show your programming to the judges. All right. So you do have to use sensors. All right. And you do have to use the data in your programming. So there's two kind of next level stuff, and it's part of the development of your teams. All right. So let me just show you kind of what sensing is about. If you look at the Riley Rover robot, it kind of mounts a sensor like this, and then you can program it, and you go until it sees red or go until it sees green. That is all very fine and well, okay. But it's inaccurate if there's light shining, and if there's line following, it won't necessarily be accurate. So there's a link also to adding a sensor to your robot. This is just the Riley Rover with a color sensor in front is good for the first phase of programming, where you just find a line or find a color, something like that. And what I'll do tomorrow is I'll show you how you then compensate for environmental changes and environmental issues. So just by way of introduction, this is the I don't know, somewhere along the line, this has got all kinds of funny names. This is the ultrasonic sensor. Okay, it is the ultrasonic sensor. It's got a sender and receiver, and it usually sends a signal to a straight or a flat surface. Okay, that's a whole lot of other activities you can do with the ultrasonic. If you have like a tin, if you have a rounded, it might not, it's send and receive because it's an angle of deflection. Also, if there's something ahead of it, the robot might not see it because the signal that is transmitted might go right past the object in front of it, and so it won't pick it up. Okay, as your ultrasonic sensor, note in the spike primes, it comes with its own little wire. All right, very different to your EV3 wires, but it works nonetheless. And so I've got that, and I was sure I had a robot, but I don't. So that is just all right. Then the touch sensor makes so much sense because you touch it. You've got to push it in. So your robot will go forward until it touches something. And obviously, if you mount your sensor up here and you're going to bash into something, you're going to bash into the object. If your sensor must be obviously mounted where the object is that you're not going to collide with. And then our good old color sensor, it's got to go down. All right, it's got to be facing down if you want to follow a line. It's got to be up if you want to look for a color. You've got to mount it for where you want it. All right, and so these are the sensors that we're going to talk about today. All right, I'm going to give you an introduction, and there are a whole lot of activities that you can do with your sensors. In the overview document at the beginning of MOOC number 2, you're welcome to go and have a look there. And we're busy compiling a whole lot of really cool activities as well. So if you've got something to contribute, if you think something is really fun, then you're welcome to contribute that. All right. So Tumelo, now I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to do my presentation, and then you can confirm that you can see it. Okay.
All right. I'll confirm as soon as I see it. Thank you. There we go.
Ah, that was quick. All right. From the beginning. There we go. All right. So you're in M2. You said I must hide this part. Okay, there we go. All right. So now we're about sensors and flow control. And by way of introduction, I am Patricia Goos. Cabello is the project engagement, and Anzani and Tumelo do communications. And then between Casper and Anzani, we get the production out and we get all the analytics out. And so what I am assuming now is that you have at least done the basics. So you can build a robot, you can program a robot, and you have maybe you're on the road to mastering navigation, because navigation is what makes your robot goes forward and backwards. Okay. And this is our team. We work well as a team, and we keep going. And I've just got there, Tumelo, with your MOOC moment. Tumelo, if you have any trouble with your MOOCs or queries about your MOOCs, please email Tumelo on the ISET email, and he will send you a link. He has a general session on a Friday at 3 o'clock, and so he'll answer all your questions. Okay, so there's the email addresses, and here we go. All right. So what we're trying, the aim of all these sessions is really to equip you as the robotics coaches, whether you're an educator, a student, a trainer, visionary community leader. We would like to ensure that you are competent and confident, because we want the learners then to be competent and confident in their teams, and then compete in competitions as competent and confident teams. All right. So we're kind of assuming you have access to the EV3 or the Spike Prime, or if you've got some NXTs. And somebody has just allowed me to adopt his old NXT, which is really cool. And then you've got the software which you can download. So if you have an EV3, you can use either the lab version, which is the bulk of the presentation. But we are busy. We are busy very with great gusto trying to get it replaced. EV3 or EV3 Classroom, and then the Spike Prime, and those are the scratch versions of it. Okay, if you don't have a robot, you're welcome to use the Virtual Robotics Toolkit. That and there is a free key that you can use for I think 30-day trial period. Or there's Lego Digital Designer, or it's called Bricklink Studio, that you can design a robot. All right, so you're welcome to also to ask for more information about that. All right, so what we have come to today is now we're adding sensors to our robots, and it's in the system of input, process, and output, where our processing is our programming, and our output is then making the robot go forward and go backwards. And by the end of these 4 sessions, by Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to talk about, okay, so how do we then make the attachments move? Okay, so that is kind of the next level. That's another level of output. But input is your data that you're measuring from the environment. Okay, and you're getting measurements, and that is measured as data. And so hopefully in M4, when it comes out, there's some data logging stuff, and so you can actually see the data that's being read, multiple little measurements by your sensors, as input data. All right. So the whole question is, and it was interesting that we get in the previous session with Tumelo and the robotics and water, where your sensors are actually used underwater. I don't know whether the EV3 sensors will survive underwater, but let me just put it that way. But you do need sensors to see where you're going. So whether you're on land and you want to, avoid the abyss, or you want to avoid flying off the cliff, or you want to avoid something in front of you, or the mountain in front of you, there needs to be data that you can measure. And so the measured data must be accurate. All right. So, and it's used then, we can use that to estimate and measure the condition of the environment, but also to generate a response. So your programming is then saying, what is the measured data, and how then shall the robot then respond to that measured data? Okay, so some of the questions are, so how are sensors classified? And for our robot, we've got really the basics. So the eyes, or the measuring the distances, the ultrasonic sensors, your touch sensor in front, your color sensor, which helps you to follow lines. So that's kind of in a nutshell the different types of sensors. And there's a whole lot of information about that. And why do robots need sensors? Well, it gives them that upper level of intelligence. Okay, it's artificial, of course, but it just gives the robot some idea of what the environment is around it. So whether there are obstacles in its way, whether it can reverse back, whether it can maybe follow a line to make it just a little bit less, let's just say more accurate. All right. And especially for these critical robots for safety. Well, sensors are needed to make sure that the sensors actually do pick up that there is something happening in the environment. There's an interesting article on the role of sensors in the evolution of robotics, because as your sensors are getting more sensitive and reading more information from the environment, it allows your robots to be more aware of the environment, and cleverer in inverted commas. All right. And then which sensor is the most important? Well, it's not about which is most important. It's like, is your arm or your leg most important? But it depends where you are and what you're doing. So if you have a robot that is trying to look for a fire, I would probably say the heat sensor is the kind of the most important. But so it's form and function. So you'll then name some common sensors used on robots. There's some 7 common sensors used on robots. And that's also a really good overview of where we are. Okay, so you've got your input, process, and output, and your sensors are then reading information and capturing it and use it to solve a problem. Okay, so then there's the thing of calibration, is to make sure that the data that you're reading is actually what you think you're reading. All right, it's no use saying stop when you get to green and the color frequency that you've calibrated it to is actually not green. So then it's not going to happen. Okay, so the data, the correct data must be used, and then we've got to use it in our programming. And so there's only 3 options for flow control. No matter which language you speak, there's only 3 options. So up until now, the robot's been doing this, and then that, and then that. So go forward, stop, turn right, stop, turn left, stop, go forward, stop, make a sound, go stop, da, 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 da. So that's linear. So every single piece of code then is executed. Okay, the repetition comes in is when the program says, you take a chunk of code, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever number of lines, and you execute it multiple times until you have a control condition that's true. So go forward and make a sound until what? Until you get to a red line, until you hit a brick wall, until you collide with a tin or something like that. Okay, that's the repetition. So you do something until the condition is true. The decision will come in and say, okay, so what color do you see? If you see green, turn left. If you see blue, turn right. Also, you can make a decision. If you've come to follow a line and you see and I'll show you how to follow the line tomorrow, but it's kind of keeping the edge when you follow the line. Okay, and that's a decision. That's decision structure. All right. So like, what is then a decision? And this decision is really only a device. It's a device that is used to detect or measure some physical property of the environment in which your robot is moving. Okay. Now, you have to attach it. You have to attach it 2 ways. You've got to attach it first and foremost with connectors, because it's got to be rigid in structure. It mustn't dingle dangle, or it's like half hanging on and then falling off halfway. So number 1, it must be attached with connectors rigidly, and then it needs the wires to connect it to the processor. And it's very much like we have these nerves to our brain, that we can have as many touch sensors as we like in our hands, but if it's not connected neurally to our brain, that message is not going to get to the brain. So also to make sure that you are connected, that the message actually goes through to your brain. All right. So what do these sensors look like? There's a little rotation sensor. They're all quite small. The color sensor, the ultrasonic sensor, and then the distance. The ultrasonic is the one that measures the distance, and then the touch is the bump and the press and release. All right. So this, I went to go looking for a robot with the Spike Prime kit, and I found this really cute one. It's called a Coulee Robot. You can see that there's plenty of place here to mount your attachments. All right. Again, you've got to attach it rigidly, otherwise it's going to keep falling off. All right. So this is from FL Casts. They've labeled all their robots. Big surprise. But what I want to say is that this is just a robot. It's got no sensors on it, but you've got plenty of place down the bottom here, up the top here, to mount then your sensors. Okay, so just maybe in terms of what is the program, how are we going to change the program? If I wrote a program, and this is still with the EV3 lab version, I will get an example. It's kind of reset the motors, move forward, stop, one goes to the side, stop, go reverse, and say hello. All right, so that's one thing, but there's no indication that anything is happening in the environment. So the robot doesn't know what the environment is. There's no data. Now, if we could measure the data and then use that to make the robot more effective, it really does help. It really does help. And so your robot will be much more reliable. All right. So let's talk about the looping data iterative flow control called the loop structure. And then we use sensor input data. So for example, here is a robot. This one has got an ultrasonic sensor attached to the front of it. Okay. And this one's got a color sensor attached to the front of it. So what are we going to do? Okay. So if we have a touch sensor, the touch sensor usually forward, so we don't bump into something. But if you want to make sure you don't reverse, you'll put it at the back. If you want to have it, this one is mounted kind of at the top above the brick. So it's used as a starting for the robot. So you don't really use your find the program on the brain and then you start it. No, you just touch this touch sensor and then it'll go. All right. Again, you've got to have a structure with a connector and you've got to have the function. For function, there has to be a wire and it's usually port 1, 2, or 3. Port number 4 is reserved for your ultrasonic. Okay, so here's your ultrasonic. Again, you'll put it either down the bottom here or you'll put it kind of higher up. When we play robotic soccer, we mount it to the side so that it knows how far in the field it is. All right. So it's forward to measure the distance from an object. And then obviously once you get a reading to say there's something in front of you, then it'll say stop. So there you're using information from your environment and it's then telling your robot to stop. Okay. Again, it's got to be connected with a connector and it has to have a wire in port 4. And that makes sure that the message actually gets to the brain that you need to stop. All right. The color sensor. Okay, so the color sensor we will do tomorrow. We will do it on Tuesday. This putting it down like this is really very rudimentary. It's not very reliable, but it's a good way to start teaching color sensors. Okay. Again, it's got to have a color connect. It can't just dangle, and then you've got to have a wire, and usually port 1, 2, or 3 in the brain, just to kind of get the message across. Sorry. And then the gyro sensor. So the gyro sensor is really mounted at the top here. I want to kind of ask you rather focus that your learners really understand the color sensor and the ultrasonic sensor and the touch sensor. And then maybe if there's time to do the gyro sensor, yeah, there's too many things that could possibly go wrong. All right, so let's talk about flow control. So if you have a loop, it's usually within the structure, and I'll show you now the scratch structure. But if you've got this structure and you say whatever happens inside the loop is going to keep happening until this control structure is true. Now this one is for eternity, so eternity is a long time. So in other words, this loop is not going to end. But you can choose until some sensor detects something, and with the situation, with an actual value, and that specified value will then stop the loop. All right, so this is exactly the same as what we saw previously, but now this is just now into the scratch programming as an alternative. Okay, so let's read it. It says the program starts and you repeat until, so that's a loop, until what? Until the touch sensor in port number A is pressed. Okay, so then we're just going to keep going forward until we bash into a wall, and then we're going to stop. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, again here, repeat until there's your ultrasonic sensor in port number A is closer than 15 centimeters. So as soon as something gets within 15 centimeters of your robot, it's going to stop, which is what we want. Okay, and then here, repeat until your color sensor in port number A, if you see red, then you must stop. Okay, so that is your condition that you're going to use then to stop the programming. Okay, so if you read this program here, we're going to keep going forward with 50% power until what? Until the touch sensor in port number 1 is bumped. All right, if it is bumped, if this is true, then we're going to get out the loop and we're going to just say switch off everything. Okay, and then the robot will stop. Okay, here again, we're going to keep going forward until what? Until the ultrasonic sensor in port number 4 sees something that is less than 20 centimeters away. So as soon as something comes in within 20 centimeters, we need to stop. All right. That's the criteria or the condition that will determine that it can go out of the loop. All right. Again here, again, we're going forward until what? Until the color sensor in port number 3 sees red. Okay, and then it'll stop. Okay. Okay, so sometimes as an alternative to not having a color sensor or an ultrasonic sensor or a touch sensor, you say, okay, give it some time. So it goes forward for 10 seconds and then it will stop. But then it has no idea what's going on in the environment. And those 10 seconds might just be too long, and then it'll crash into the wall. It'll go over the side of the cliff. So then it's not actually doing anything in the environment. It's just saying go for 10 seconds and then stop, and then heck knows where the robot is. Okay. Again here, so when the robot starts, you repeat until, I've just said this, until the touch sensor is pressed, okay? Until the ultrasonic is closer than 15 centimeters, until the color sensor sees the color red. Okay. Is it hopping here? Let me just have a look here. Okay. So again, as you've used the data to sense, all right, and that sensing is used to end a loop. Exactly the same, you can use data to decide which way you're going to go. All right, and that's called decision making in flow control. Okay, so you've got two options. You've got in all structures, you've got two options. If that touch sensor is pressed, okay, yes it is, then you do this line of code. If it's not, then you do this line of code. But this condition will then decide which execution path you're going to go into. Okay, the specific value is going to choose which path you're going to go into. All right, so if you look over here and says the color sensor, what color, if it sees red, it must say red. If it doesn't see red, then it says hello. All right, I'm not saying what color it measures, it's just saying if it measures that color, then it'll say red, 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 red. All right. Okay, so again here, then you can make each program bar longer or as long as or short as. So here we are going ping, 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 ping. And then in port number 1, your touch sensor is bumped or touched. Okay. As soon as you touch it, you stop. You wait 1 second and you reverse here for 2 rotations. Okay. And then if 10 seconds haven't passed, then you go back in again and you carry on. All right. If you are not bumped or touched or whatever, you just keep going saying hello, 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 hello. So what does this do? It says that you keep going until you bump into it, then you just reverse a bit, and then you keep going until you reverse it. So this is actually to get a robot out of a maze. Okay. And it's exactly the same. That one's exactly the same. Again, how would that translate then into Scratch? It says, well, we're going to have got A and B moving. All right. If the color sensor on port A sees the color black, then we start moving with 40-20. All right, so what happens if we go 40-20? Then if we go 40-20, the B motor moves with more power, so more speed, and so it's going to veer off to the right. Okay, if the color is not black, okay, then we're going to go towards the left. All right. Okay, so for sensing, there are a lot of resources. Okay, and everybody wants to give their 2 cents or their interpretation of how to use sensors and what are sensors and how do you build a Riley rover with sensors and how do you have some improvements on your robot, and then obviously Spike Prime and sensors and Spike looping with Spike. So it's all there. Okay, now some of these links work, some of them don't work. All right, I'm just looking, repeat 5 times, repeat 5 times. I don't say anything works until you can repeat it 5 times with getting the same results. It's just how it is. Okay, there are a lot of extra lessons. This one is computer science for high schools, or there's a whole lot of learning going there, and everybody wants to add their 2 cents. If you find something that really works, please let us know that we can share it with the rest of the community, and that'll be really great. Okay, so there's the one. I tried to show here, so I must actually make it a bit bigger, but there's a thing on loops and there's this thing on loops with Spike Primes and decisions with Spike Primes. Okay, so I'm hearing a whole lot of people saying that they've just got brand new Spike Primes. If you've got a brand new Spike Prime, hold on to it. There is a major delay and a major shortage of robots. So well done. Okay, So I really encourage you to complete the iSet Robotics MOOC 1 so that you just kind of have a base on which to build M2, all right? And then register for M2, install the software, and then really, especially with sensors, you've just got to keep practicing, see whether what works, what doesn't work, and what works for you as well, all right? So we've got all the MOOC queries and the robotics queries. You can send us to the iSet email address, and there's my email address as well. Okay. So, any questions before I continue? Let me just check here quickly. Anybody got anything to share?
Gentlemen and ladies, feel free to raise your hand or to unmute yourselves if you have any questions regarding today's sessions. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Hoos, for the presentation.
I think with sensors, it's important to know that you have to, it's kind of the next step. You have to get sensors onto your robot. And so if you can spend a couple of lessons with your learners that they understand it totally, that's well invested. Yeah. Yeah. So just maybe whilst we're waiting for some questions, this is Mario. Now, Mario's got 2 color sensors to follow a line, okay? But they're embedded underneath the robot. So that avoids any other extra light or disruptive light coming in. So the measurements are pretty accurate, all right? It's well covered, it's well protected, and it's not going to let up just any light come up and come into the thing. So in terms of reliability, it's very good. It still needs to be calibrated at the beginning of a session. So then you first need to make sure that black is black and white is white, and all the colors in between are the right frequency. Yeah. Yep.
Any other questions from our participants? Thank you for covering a question that a person might have asked.
Okay.
So far, we don't have any question on the chat. No raising of hands, no muting of microphones. Please feel free to ask questions.
Maybe just as a really fun thing to do, it's called the corridor challenge. Wait, let me just rescue my cat here. It's not just busy destroying my desk here. Cat.
All right. On that note, can I have, by show of hands, those that are not in the MOOC portal, those that are not registered? By a show of hands, kindly please raise your hands. Oh, I see Kenther. So it's only one person that's not registered on our MOOC portal. Oh, okay. I see there's 2.
You might as well quickly give an introduction to Mello. Thank you very much.
All right, let me do that. All right, for the purposes of this presentation, and thank you so much for the opportunity and interacting with us. I see we've got 2 participants who are in need of this. So what you simply do, you open your tab and simply click on mooc.unisa.ac.za/portal. Underneath the UNISA logo, you should see where it's written New Account. When you click on New Account, you put in your user ID, first name, last name, as well as your personal email address, and create a password and verify your password. Once you are done, you will have to insert your username here, as well as your password right there. When you are done with that, you simply log in. After logging in, this is the first page that you'll see. On this page, just underneath the UNISA logo, there is what we call Overview, Profile, as well as Membership. You will click on Membership. Underneath Membership, this is the first page that you'll see. So on that, on that first page that you're seeing there, you'll have to scroll down looking for iSet Robotics M1 2022. Because I'm already a registered user, it won't appear on my site. But for you, what you'll simply have to do is simply click here, click on Untitled Robotics M1 and click on search. If you still can't find it there, that's the second option for you to find the Untitled Robotics M1 2022. Then you click on my current sites because you might have already joined. When you click on the MOOC portal or the site, this is the first page that you will see. On that first page, that's just an indication of what you will expect. I really encourage you to kindly please go through this. Just at least read this first page. Please note that this MOOC is available from February until the 30th of November 2022. So you still have time, and our assignments, we don't have due dates. So feel free to complete your unit 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as submit a portfolio. If you have any questions regarding anything related to this MOOC portal, feel free to send us an email and we'll certainly attend to that. I hope I was clear. Over to you, Dr. Host. Thank you.
As always, very clear, Tumela. Thank you very much.
I see we still have a hand.
Yes.
Kenther. Oh, okay. I think that was an old hand. All right. You can go ahead, Dr. Host.
No, I'm just saying, you make it so clear, but we also realize that sometimes you kind of lose or don't understand where you're going. So just to know that if you are stuck on anything related to MOOCs, you are more than welcome to send Tumelo an email, and he'll graciously meet you on a Friday at 3 o'clock, or if that's too late, you can just ask him one-on-one then.
Yes, regarding that, Dr. Host, as previously mentioned, on Fridays, we will have our MOOC sessions that will take place at 3 o'clock. But if you cannot make it, like Dr. Host has mentioned now, feel free to send me an email, and then we can arrange in between the week and then find a suitable time and date for us to go ahead. I see we've got a... Okay, Dr. Host.
Yeah.
On the chat, we've got Ms. C. van der Berg. She says we'll be discussing how to calibrate the color sensor. Also, does any of the other sensors require calibration?
Okay, so thanks, Tumelo. Yes, I'll show you how to calibrate a color sensor tomorrow. For our purposes, not really, but sometimes it's really good just to make sure that what you think you're measuring, you are actually measuring. So I'll show you that in port view as well tomorrow. But the color sensor is the most important one that needs calibration. There is actually a motor sensor in your motors, and so it's not a calibration, but more as a kind of prevention of inaccuracies. So that's why we reset our motors. That's also part of kind of, just careful use of your sensors. But I'll deal with that tomorrow. And then Almarie says, when are the questions marked? When are the questions marked?
Yeah.
As it used to be?
Okay, I was about to go to that.
Oh, go for it, Tumelo. I can't read.
Almarie says, when are the questions marked? It has to be added in as part of our portfolio. And then she says, how do we embed videos in the PDF files? And then the last question says, where do we find invitations Friday sessions?
Okay. So you want to go to the bottom first, Tumelo?
Okay. Where do we find the invitations for Friday sessions?
Mm-hmm. You can send Jan. Yeah, I'm seeing Jan's hand up here.
We'll come to you, Jan.
Elmray, just send an ISET email to Tamello, and he will share the meeting link with you. We're going to use the same link for all Friday afternoon 3 o'clock sessions. Yeah. All right.
I'll also say it now as well.
Okay, I can show you the spike prime calibrations as well. Then I can do tomorrow. And how do you embed videos in PDFs? Yes. Customer is quite the boffin on that, but basically you upload it to YouTube and then put the YouTube link in your document. Okay.
And then let's see. Another question says, when are the portfolio questions marked?
When are they marked? They will all be processed before the end of the year.
All right. Let me go to Jan before I complete the chat.
Okay.
Jan, see your hand has been up for some time now.
Patiently.
No problem. No, exactly. I only received the link for today's session. So the other sessions, I didn't receive any link. That's the one thing. And then just a question, when we complete this, can we get will we get some kind of just a certificate or a letter or something?
Yes, you'll get a certificate. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sure, definitely. Jan, I'm just concerned, what links are you talking about?
You saying tomorrow the slide that was sent out on email only had this session link only. It didn't have the other. For MOOC 2, only the session link.
We use the same session for all 4 days.
Okay, so I just click on the same link again. Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Same time.
We're trying to be organized. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So we use one link. It also helps with the recording, so we can just keep it all together. Jan. Yeah. All right. And okay, that was Jan's question. And V, what is the price of the Spike Prime kit? So here's the kicker. The Spike Prime kit is actually in demand. We are earnestly and urgently waiting for delivery. It seems that there's a major shortage of what do you call them, chips, which is an important component of your robot. And so we are working with the suppliers, but it seems like there's an overall shortage of these robots. So you could use your EV3s still, that's still fine. I am earnestly trying to find old EV3s that I can buy up and we can use them as part of the robotics. But for now, we're just hanging in there. There is a now I'm going to what is it called? I don't want to give you the wrong name. There's another robot which is similar to an EV3, but it's the retail version of it. Oh my word, why can I not think of it? Yeah, but it seems like all robotics, everything about robotics is scarce, and I don't want to say it's because of the COVID thing, but there is just an overall shortage. I know some have come into the country and they are available. So V, if you want to order one, please order one sooner rather than later. But your EV3 should be fine now for now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I see we've got a video from Jan. Thanks, Jan. I'll have to look at that. Yeah. Just also on programming with sensors, there's lots of activities you can do to get your kids to understand sensors, and the whole lot of coffee tins in a corridor is actually quite a cute activity to do, just to get the robots to move and then be totally reliant on a touch sensor or an ultrasonic sensor, whichever sensor you want to do. Yeah. Okay. This is now really cool. This is very interactive. Any other questions? Let me just check here. No more questions.
Any other questions from our online participants regarding today's session? I hope Dr. Gross has been answering your questions nicely. If
I hope so too.
clarity, feel free. We still have time. Yes.
Okay. And I'll set up a mat so we can actually do some practical stuff tomorrow as well. But the color sensor is one of those things. If the kids understand, follow the line, yeah, moving forward is just excellent. Because they initially just do, you kind of do a zigzag. So you just follow the line on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. And then as you go on, you can do proportional line follow as well. Yeah. All right. So that was the introduction to sensors, specifically the ultrasonics, that you don't bash into something, and the touch sensor also, you don't bash into something. And then we'll do the color sensor tomorrow. Okay. I want to thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's really been a lot of fun. I'm just going to say to Casper he can stop the recording, and then we'll see each other on the same link. We'll see each other tomorrow.